Article 20. Protection against arbitrary punishment. In this article, three things need to be remembered. No ex post facto law. No double jeopardy. No self-incrimination. Ex post facto law. Ex post facto law is the law that somebody has committed crime, government has enacted a law that applies to previous date when he has committed the crime, not from the present day. So ex post facto law is the way to punish the acts done before when there was no law. Ex post facto law is that which we want to enforce from the previous date. So no ex post facto law. Punishment would be given for the crime according to the law prevailing at that time. And punishment cannot be greater than that prescribed by the law. No double jeopardy. Double jeopardy means giving punishment twice. So no double jeopardy. Punishment should not be given twice. But it does not is in the case of administrative or departmental inquiries. A person has done some mischievous thing, some crime, there should be no jeopardy. No cases in one court and in another court. There cannot be double punishment. But administrative inquiry can hold simultaneously with a court case. This is not in the context of double jeopardy, because these administrative or departmental inquiries are not of judicial nature. These are not of judicial nature. No self-incrimination. Self-incrimination means forcing an accused to give witness against himself. So this Article 20 prohibits self-incrimination. But this self-incrimination principle does not apply to in case of production of material objects, if I want any proof, any material objects, and I want that he should produce, he can. He cannot object. Specimen signature, that his specimen is there, sign please. blood sample, thumb impression. Exhibition of body. Check the body, etc. This no ex post facto law, this principle does not apply to civil cases, only in criminal, not in civil. This no self-incrimination, it applies only in criminal, not in civil. Only in criminal cases, not in civil. Article 21. No person shall be deprived of life or liberty shall be deprived of life or liberty except according to procedure established by law. This article says that you cannot deprive anybody's life or liberty except according to the procedure established by the law. Whatever there is procedure by the law, only through that way you can do it, otherwise no. Now there is a controversy. In the Gopalan case, it was said that this protection is available only against arbitrary, executive action. So life can only be deprived through arbitrary executive action and not through arbitrary legislative action. Means Parliament can make a law which is not fair, reasonable or just. But since it has made the law and the law itself says that there is a procedure, if this law is applicable, you can take away life. So life can be deprived in the Gopalan case. But in the Menka case, it is available against both arbitrary, executive and legislative. Both against arbitrary, executive and legislative. That is, law should be fair, just and reasonable. Law itself should be fair. This should not be there that somebody has stolen 1 kg sugar and he should be hanged to death. This should not be there. So law should be fair, reasonable and just. This was affirmed in Menka case. Article 22. Protection against arrest, detention. Detention can be of two types. Preventive and punitive. Punitive means after trial and conviction. If somebody has been arrested through ordinary law, he will be tried in the court and then he will be convicted and given some sentence. So this is the arrest that after the trial and conviction is called punitive detention. Preventive detention is before trial and conviction, just on the basis of suspicion. If somebody is being suspected that he will do some crime, so on the basis of preventive detention law, he can be detained before trial and conviction. So what are the safeguards in case of punitive detention? The person should be communicated the grounds. He should be given representation. For legal practitioners, he should be produced to magistrate within 24 hours. And he should be released except when the magistrate says that detention should be more. Released after producing to magistrate. And what are the safeguards in the preventive detention? Ground should be communicated. Except the facts which are of public interest. He should be given an opportunity to make representation through legal practitioner. Represent through legal practitioner. Detention can be of 3 months. Then he should be produced to advisory committee. Then the advisory committee can recommend that further detention is needed or the person should be released free. And the advisory committee consists of judges of High Court. Produced to advisory committee, and maximum time period he can be detained is 3 months. Then the advisory committee can say that detention is further needed or not. Now, what is the legislative domain of making the preventive detention laws? That is, Parliament can make the preventive detention laws, as well as state legislature can also make the preventive detention laws. So, what is the arrangement? Parliament can make the preventive detention laws if on the subjects of security of India, defense of India and foreign affairs. On these subjects, Parliament can make preventive detention laws, while Parliament and state legislature concurrently can make the laws with respect to the security of state, public order, maintenance of supplies and important services and commodities. With respect to these subjects, state legislatures can also make the laws related to preventive detention. Article 23. It prohibits trafficking. in human beings. And it also prohibits begar. Begar is work without remuneration. Work without remuneration. Trafficking means forcefully transporting human beings to some other person by exploiting their vulnerabilities or through coercion also. So this article prohibits trafficking in human beings. What is trafficking? Buying and selling of human beings, immoral trafficking, of children, women, including prostitution, Devdasi system, slavery. Devdasi system is prevalent in which a woman is married to a male deity of temple. So therefore woman becomes a servant of that male deity. In the name of Devdasi, the woman is exploited. So this is prohibited. Begar is also prohibited. Forced labor is also prohibited. Forced labor does not means only coercion by means of physical force. It also means that if somebody is exploiting someone's economic vulnerability, that also comes in forced labor. Also includes economic vulnerability. Exception to this is state can impose compulsory service. Example, military service, social service. Then state can pay remuneration or not, that depends. So it's an exception. Article 24. It prohibits employment of children below 14 years of age in hazardous work. Factory or mine. But it allows in the harmless work. So now we discuss right to freedom of religion. Article 25. It has 4 dimensions. Right to conscience, right to profess, right to practice, right to propagate. Conscience means relation, molding of relation with God, inner relation. how I create inner relation with God, how I mold my relationship with God internally. This is my conscience. Profess. I declare my religious beliefs, that these are my religious beliefs. This is profess. Declare religious beliefs. Right to practice. I practice worship, rituals. Propagate. I transmit my views to some other person. Transmission of beliefs. When I propagate, I doesn't have the right to convert some other person into my religious folds. So right to conversion is not a fundamental right. Conscience, profess, practice, propagate. Reasonable restrictions are public order, morality, health. These are the reasonable restrictions, and also state is empowered to regulate economic, financial, political activity associated with these institutions of public character. And also state can throw open Hindu religious institutions of public character to all sections. For example, let's say a temple. So state can throw open a temple so that everybody can come to the temple to reform it, to reform the institutions. And the word Hindu also contains, the word Hindu also means, it includes Sikhs, Jains and Buddhist. Article 26. Every religious denomination means a sect of religion. For example, Catholic Christians, Protestants. In Hinduism, Shaivism, Vaishnavism and different sects, a denomination, a particular group in a religion. So every denomination has the following rights. Right to establish and manage religious institution for religious or charitable purpose. Right to manage its own affair in matters of religion, right to own, acquire Movable, immovable property. Right to administer this property, such property. Right to administer such property. So therefore, this article 25 gives right to individuals and this article 26 give rights to collective persons, a group. Now what is religious denomination? Some criteria have to be met to be called as religious denomination. It should be the collection of beliefs of individuals for their spiritual well-being. It should have common organization and it should have a distinctive name. These criteria were not met by Aurobindo Society. So therefore, court said that Aurobindo Society does not qualify as a religious denomination. Article 27. No person shall be compelled to pay taxes. For promotion of any particular religion. That is, we Indians cannot be compelled to pay taxes to promote any one religion. But fee can be levied. Because fee is for the administration of secular provisions like making the environment clean, upgrading the infrastructure. So fee can be levied. Special lines in some temples, fee can be levied. Article 28. No religious instruction shall be provided in educational institutions wholly maintained by state. There are 4 types of educational institutions. First type is educational institutions wholly maintained by the state. Second, institutions administered by state but established under endowment or trust. Third type is institutions recognized by state. Fourth, institutions receiving aid from state. Institutions wholly maintained by the state means these are the institutions of state. State is spending the money, state is also doing the administration. They are completely managed, maintained by the states. So here religious instruction about religion is not permitted. Second type of institutions, administered by the state but established under religious endowment or trust. Let's say a religious, the typical examples are AMU and BHU, Banaras Hindu University. These institutions were established mainly to train purohits or acharyas or maulvis. So their main purpose was to bring about a cadre which are purohits or acharyas. So therefore their main purpose was religious instruction. So in these kind of institutions, they are administered by the state, but as they are established under endowment or trust, here it is religious instruction is permitted. Institutions which are recognized by the state. Which institutions are recognized by the state which fulfills certain criteria? Let's say criteria for some sanitation, criteria for this much area should be playground, this much teachers should be there, teachers qualification should be there. If it is done, then the state recognizes the institutions, and then state also gives aid to some institutions for their benefit for the community as a whole. So in these kind of institutions, it is voluntarily permitted. Voluntarily permitted means they can hold some religious event also. In that religious event, I want to attend that religious event or not as a student of these institutions, it is my will. These institutions cannot force me to attend that. Here it is permitted and here it is not permitted. You have to remember this for prelims. Educational and cultural rights. Article 29. Any section of citizen, any section having distinct language, script, culture, and residing in any part of the India has the right to preserve the same. So any section of citizen means any group. They are not necessarily we are talking about any section, they are not necessarily minorities. The word any section also includes majority. So any section of citizen having distinct language, script, culture has the right to preserve the same. This is the one provision of the Article 29. Second, no citizen shall be denied admission in educational institutions which are receiving aid from state or maintained out of state funds only on grounds of religion, race, caste or language. Article 30. Minorities, whether religious or linguistic, remember in Article 29 there is any section of society, there is no mention of minority. Minority term is mentioned in Article 30, and also minority is not defined in the Constitution. Minority, whether religious or linguistic, has following rights. They can establish and administer educational institutions, and if state want to compulsory acquire that property, then a state is compulsorily acquiring that property this right that they can establish and administer their institutions, then their right should not be affected. That is their right, this right to establish and administer educational institution, it should not be affected. Third, that state should not discriminate between giving aid. State should not discriminate while giving aid. To these institutions. There are three types of minority educational institutions. First, that seek recognition as well as aid. Second, that only seek recognition but not aid. Third, that neither seek recognition nor aid. Institutions which seek recognition and aid, and institutions which seek recognition but not aid, they are under the regulatory power of the state. That is, government can prescribe, or government agency, NCRT, etc., these institutions can prescribe what should be the syllabus, what should be the, how many teachers should be there, what is the criteria for the schools or colleges. But the third part, that is neither seek recognition nor aid, they are free to administer according to them. State cannot make any condition for the regulation of these institutions. They are free to administer how they want to administer. So this was Article 29 and 30. Right to constitutional remedies, Article 32. It is the heart and soul of the Constitution as defined by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. Right to fundamental right, and it itself a fundamental right. By the way of Article 32, one can directly move to Supreme Court to enforce its fundamental right. So the 4 points are there regarding the Article 32. Right to move to Supreme Court is guaranteed. By Article 32, one can directly move to Supreme Court. So right to move to Supreme Court is guaranteed. Supreme Court can issue writs. What are writs? We will discuss. To enforce the fundamental rights. Third, Parliament can empower any court to issue writs directions. Parliament can empower any court, not only Supreme Court, High Court, any court that can issue writs or directions. Fourth, President can suspend the right to move court during national emergency. During national emergency, President can suspend the right to move to any court. This is Article 359. Now, different kinds of writs. Habeas corpus. As explained nicely by Ajay Devgan in the movie Drishyam. Mandamus. Prohibition. Certiorari. Quo warranto. Now, to enforce fundamental rights, Supreme Court can issue writs. First of all, habeas corpus. To have the body of. Let's say a person has been detained. Now, if he is alive or not, how do we know? Supreme Court can issue writ of habeas corpus to have the body of. If this writ is issued, then the authority, police, anybody have to show the person to whom they have detained. This habeas corpus writ can be issued against individual or public authority. It cannot be issued when detention is lawful. When detention is lawful, then it is not issued. When the detention is due to the contempt of court. When the detention is through the orders of competent court. Detention by competent court, and when detention is outside the purview of jurisdiction of court. Next, mandamus. We command. We command. That is, this direction is issued to public official to perform his duties. So therefore, this can be issued against public body, inferior court, government, tribunal, corporation, and mandamus we command cannot be issued against president and governors, chief justice of high court, individuals, to enforce contractual obligations to enforce departmental instruction that does not have statutory force. Means department is giving instructions without a backing of law, and when the duty is discretionary. It is up to my discretion, I do it or not. So court cannot command me. Next, prohibition means to forbid. You have to remember this for prelims. What is the meaning of habeas corpus? To have the body of, we command, to forbid. When, to whom it is writs are issued, to whom writs cannot be issued, you have to remember this to solve MCQs. To forbid. Writ of prohibition is issued by higher court. To lower court, or you can say tribunal, so that the latter means lower court or tribunal should not exceed its jurisdiction. If latter means lower court or tribunal is exceeding its jurisdiction and it is giving something, it is doing something outside their purview, which is not in the domain of this, and they are exceeding it. So higher court can issue the writ of prohibition. This prohibition can be issued against judicial and quasi-judicial bodies. It cannot be issued against individuals, administrative bodies, and legislative bodies, that is parliament or anything. Certiorari, to be informed or to be certified. This is a writ issued by higher court to lower court or tribunal to squash its order. Let's say a tribunal is giving its order, it has given its order, and or let's say a lower court has given its order. To squash that order, that it will not have any force, writ of certiorari can be issued by higher court. So from higher court to lower court or tribunal to squash order. Writ of certiorari can be issued against judicial bodies, quasi-judicial bodies, and administrative bodies also. See the difference. Prohibition, it was issued against only judicial and quasi-judicial, but not administrative. Not administrative. Here, it can be issued against administrative, and it cannot be issued against private individuals and legislative bodies. Quo warranto means by what authority? It is issued by court to public official to so that its claim to public office can be legalized or not. Let's say a person is holding a public office, if he is legalized to hold that office or not, quo warranto is issued. So therefore, to verify the legality of claims to sit on the public office, quo warranto is issued. It is issued by court to public officials. These four habeas corpus mandamus prohibition certiorari can only be issued against the request of the individual concerned, but this quo warranto can be issued whether there is individual concerned is affected by or not. Even you and I can go to court and request that please issue quo warranto against this person if he is legal and sitting at that office or not. And this quo warranto cannot be issued against ministerial office or public or private office. Ministerial office or private office, this quo warranto cannot be issued against them. Now let us understand. Writs can be issued by Supreme Court under Article 32, and also writs can also be issued by High Court under Article 226. It is mandatory to issue writs and it is guaranteed by Supreme Court. So therefore, Supreme Court cannot deny that I won't issue writs and I won't act as a guardian of fundamental rights. Supreme Court cannot deny, but High Court can deny that I won't issue writs. And second, about the territorial jurisdiction of the Supreme Court and High Court. Territorial jurisdiction of Supreme Court is entire India. Territorial jurisdiction of High Court is only the area to which its orders are enforceable, to which its jurisdiction hold. So therefore, it is narrow. Territorial jurisdiction of High Court is Supreme Court is wide, and High Court is low. And second thing, Supreme Court can issue writs only for the fundamental rights, while High Court can issue writs for the fundamental rights as well as for the other legal rights. So in this sense, writ of High Court is wider than writ of the Supreme Court. These are the basic differences, and you have to remember Article 32 related to Supreme Court for issuing writs, and Article 226 is related to High Court for issuing writs. So this was the basic about the writs and the Article 32. Exceptions to fundamental rights. Article 31A, Article 31B, Article 31C. 31A says that 5 categories of law cannot be invalidated or cannot be challenged in the court. What are these 5 categories? Acquisition of estates, when the government acquires estate. Take over management of estates. Take over management of properties. Amalgamation of corporations. You are amalgamating 2 corporations. Modification of or abolition of. modification, abolition of rights of shareholders or directors. Modification or abolition of mining leases. So these 5 categories of right cannot be challenged. So this is an exception to fundamental right. Article 31B. All laws in 9th schedule cannot be challenged. That is, I made a law and I put that law in the 9th schedule of the Constitution. So by virtue of placing the law in 9th schedule, this law cannot be challenged in court. Court said it is against the basic structure of the Constitution, that is doctrine of judicial review. So therefore, court declared this Article 31B as unconstitutional. Article 31C. All laws made to implement DPSP's directive principles of state policy, specifically 39B and C, that is to prevent the concentration of wealth in hands and for the equitable distribution of resources. If laws are made for these two provisions, then they cannot be challenged in the court that they are violating Article 14. Cannot be challenged to violate Article 14. There are two provisions. First, second, any declaration with regard to this, with respect to above, to any law, cannot be challenged. I am just declaring that this law is to implement this. Whether there is substance or not, I am just declaring, government is declaring that I am making a law which is to implement DPSPs 13B and C. So this is a very wide arena. So therefore, government said that this is constitutional, first provision, and second is unconstitutional. So therefore, the present position is this is constitutional, this is unconstitutional, second part is unconstitutional, first is constitutional. So a verbatim is there when Article 31C comes in, Article 14 goes out. When any law is made for implementation of this and this, Article 31C, then right to equality goes out. Now there are some rights outside the Part 3. Rights outside Part 3. These are Article 265, Article 300A, Article 326. No tax can be levied except by authority of law. That if you want to impose some tax, there should be law, otherwise no tax. 300A and 326. Trade, commerce and intercourse within territory of India shall be free. 326. Election to Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha, state legislative assemblies shall be on the basis of universal adult suffrage. Universal adult suffrage. Now, there are some rights which are available only to citizens, and there are some rights which are available to both citizens and foreigners. So, rights which are available only to citizens and rights which are available to both citizens and foreigners. 15, 16, 19, 29, 30. Here 14, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28.